Laudato Si for we environmentalists is a miracle.
Nigeria's Desmond Majekodunmi joined over 4,000-strong rally in Westminster at the English capital London in June to lobby MPs on climate change legislation for the Climate Coalition, including WWF, Friends of the Earth, Christian Aid, Catholic and Anglican Church. The Archbishop of Canterbury joined faith leaders in call for urgent action to tackle climate change. Faith leaders in Britain have pledged to fast and pray for the success of key international negotiations over climate change in a new declaration warning of the huge challenge facing the world over global warming. The faith leaders also signed a declaration tagged Lambeth Declaration. The signatories call on faith communities to recognize the pressing need to make the transition to a low-carbon economy.
Lambeth Declaration was a pronouncement that came directly from who? The Archbishop of Canterbury and a plethora of other faith leaders. The Jewish faith were there, the evangelical faith were there, the Jewish faith was there, the Islamic faith were there, a whole plethora of faith leaders were there. And they also said that we need to care for the creation, that the creation is our life support system. This is very, very encouraging. So what we are now expecting is that from the pulpits all over our nation, we shall have the same sort of injunctions coming to the various congregations. And the good thing is that we might not trust our politicians too much, especially these days when there's a lot of fisticuffs and wayo and dribbling going on. But we do have a lot of faith and trust in our men of God and the leaders of our various faith communities. So he has started something. It is great. It's already had a reaction in Europe. The G7, who were meeting recently, our president also went there to meet them. They have made some very interesting pronouncements in terms of cutting back on carbon emissions, which coming from these people who are actually the leaders of the countries that have the biggest emissions is very, very significant. And I believe that this was influenced by the Pope's Laudato Si.
Here in Nigeria, the message from the Pope is yet to reach the flocks.
Mighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
The Director of Communications of the Catholic Archdiocese of Lagos and the parish priest of Our Lady Star of the Sea in Lekki says the teaching on the encyclical will be a long-time project.
It takes time to catch up. Nigerian problem is different from this minute. Why is it different? People are still clamoring for wages. People are still disturbed about food, water, light, even good environment. And so people in this kind of situation, definitely you would not expect them to react like people in Germany or people in London or people. Sure, you understand what I'm saying? But with time too, as we go on, encyclicals are not meant just for 1 day or 1 year. It goes on the life of the church. We still study the encyclicals of even Pope Benedict, Pope, name it, all the older popes. These are all church documents. Teaching officers will make references to. So with time, we will catch up.
For Desmond, the time has come for Nigeria to join the world in taking a decisive step as far as the environment is concerned.
Pragmatically done, because it applies to different people who are in different locations, in different ecozones, in a different sort of way. For instance, we're talking about carbon footprints being too high and the pollution of carbon massively affecting the environment because of climate change. But Nigeria, for instance, and most of Africa for that matter, are not the ones responsible for the high carbon footprint. The carbon footprint of Nigeria, I'm told, is less than the carbon footprint of New York City in winter. So we are not creating that particular problem. However, part of the solution to the problem, which is the capability of the forest sequestering this carbon, lies in our territory. We are host to what they call the tropical forest belt, which is known as the life belt of the earth. And We have not been taking care of our forests at all. We have damaged it terribly. The pristine forest cover of Nigeria is now down to about 5 or 7%, and it needs to get up to at least 25%. So in getting this message across to our people, in the Nigerian context, it means the leadership. The leadership, first and foremost, have to appreciate the awesome responsibility that is upon them to ensure that they put into place systems and laws that will make sure that our forests are protected, that they need to put into place programs that will ensure massive tree planting. We're talking of tens of millions, hundreds of millions of trees. It's the leadership that need to do that.
Laudato Si confronts first world business ethics and its fundamental presumptions about the right to resources and cheap labor, and its fundamental belief that profits remain the primary and sometimes the sole criterion for success. Climate deniers are not happy with the Pope's message. The U.S. Republican presidential candidate Jeb Bush, at a town hall event in New Hampshire a day after formally announcing his candidacy for the 2016 presidential election, said he was eager to read the encyclical but will take it with a grain of salt, even as it called Francis an extraordinary leader.
I think religion ought to be about making us better as people and less about things that end up getting into the political realm. So I'm a little skeptical about this.
The other thing about Republicans and presidential figures saying they will not listen to the Pope, I mean, it's their freedom. It's a freedom of their freedom of choice that they can exercise. But if their decision not to listen to the Pope is based on the fact that they think the Pope is talking about something he's not an expert in, then it takes us to the same thing. For some time now, I think it's been the attempt of the whole world to kind of try to de-emphasize the artificial split that has been introduced between religion and public life or the public space, as if religion has no role to play in public sphere, as if religion or faith has no role in public account.
If you want to do it, it can be done. There are no laws of physics speaking against it. Even from an economics point of view, it can be done. But you need to muster the will, the global will, to do it with transformation. It would be not like the Industrial Revolution which just happened by chance. It would be by design, by will, by faith, if you like. So yes, if all human beings on this planet would decide this is what we want to go for, it can be done.
Doveva evitare ogni contatto umano.
Latin America's first pope, who took his name from St. Francis of Assisi, the patron of ecology, says protecting the planet is a moral and ethical imperative for believers and non-believers alike that should supersede political and economic interests.
Most of the encyclicals we have been having will be strictly on religion. And if it's strictly on religion, it addresses just the priests, the bishops, the church within. This one now goes beyond religion per se. It now comes to environment, human ecology, science. So that's why it's generating much that is reaction. Even the Pope warned and cautiously that science and religion are not at war. Science and religion, there should be mutual dialogue, that is with the aim in unity, still going back and give praises to God the Father. So this is where you now have different divergent views, scientists, religious people, monastic people, everybody trying to say one thing or another. That is the difference.
The letter comes ahead of the next United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris in December, where governments will reach a universal climate change agreement that must keep the average global temperature from rising beyond 2 degrees centigrade and secure the ability of all countries to adapt to the climate change that is already in the global system. Countries will gather before that in New York in September at the United Nations General Assembly to agree a new set of sustainable development goals. These interlinked efforts must put all nations on track towards a sustainable future that decouples human growth from pollution and environmental degradation.
Pope Francis is personally committed to this issue like no other pope before him. And he is deeply eloquent and deeply passionate about this. And the encyclical will communicate that. The encyclical will speak to the very compelling moral imperative of addressing climate change, and not just addressing it, but addressing it in a timely fashion. This is a very, very complex issue, even for those of us who live and breathe and eat this. It's very difficult for us to explain it to each other. I mean, I get on the phone and my daughters are, they've eaten climate change since they were born. And even for them, for me to explain, it's very difficult, let alone, to someone else who's completely out there.
The Pope has said he wanted the encyclical to influence a United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris in December, and has now effectively taken its campaign to convince governments on the road. In September, he takes his message to the United States and the United Nations. Well, that's all we have time for today on the program. Don't forget to send your comments, questions, and stories you would like us to follow up. Our inbox, earthfile@channelstv.com, is always available. We will be back with you next week. From Lagos, it's bye for now.